about 9 times the speed of sound. Roger.
Hey guys, my name is Emil and I'd like to welcome you to this episode of the W201 restoration project. If you missed episode 1, click up here so you can get a full background of the vehicle we are working on. Before we begin today's task, quick summary: it's 1993 W201 that we are doing a full restoration including suspension, drivetrain and engine. In the previous episode we talked about putting an OM606 in this car, but before I jump into that I have to get all of the suspension back on the vehicle in order to be able to move them back and forth inside the garage. Unfortunately, I don't have too much space in front of it, so putting the 606 will be very challenging while the car is on the lift. That said, in today's episode, we're going to go ahead and rebuild the entire front suspension, including all new bearings for the hubs and all new bushings, shocks, and shock mounts. Okay, we've got everything apart. We got to do two things. We got to take apart the hub from the knuckle, and we have to take all of the bushings out of the control arm. Okay, so this one's clearly pretty busted. So we got to push this guy out, get these two out, and take apart the hub so we can change the bearings. Now the hub is a little bit easier. So we're going to start off with that. First thing we got to do, we got to take the cap off. Okay, cap's off. Next thing, we're going to clean this up a little bit. The kit does come with the new bolt and with the anti-static little pin there. So you can discard of those. So we're gonna have to do this. We have to undo this bolt. There it is. Next thing you know, you have to undo this. It's on a thread. Okay, you have to keep this piece because it doesn't come with the kit. Next is the little nut, little spacer here. Again, doesn't come with the kit, keep that around. Now this should slide right off. There it is. So you've got your two bearings. There's the first one, the little guy, which is at the front. Basically sits like this. So that comes right out. And then you've got one in the back that is actually held after, is held behind a seal. This is a seal here and there's a bearing inside. So the new bearings come with the kit, those can come off. Now for us, because we're doing the big brakes, we have to take the brake dust shield. Three bolts to remove. Now for the seal, what we did earlier is we just knocked it around the edges and then just pushed it out. There's the outer shell of the big bearing with the seal. This is all garbage, gets discarded. So we gotta knock the bearings, the bearing shells out. So you've got the front one there, the little guy, that's the lip there, and then you've got the bigger one in the back, which is right there. So we're gonna punch the small one forward, going out front, and then we're gonna flip this around and punch the big one back. So let's do this one first. There's the shell, out it goes, flip it around. And it's out. There we go. So that's the disassembly of the hub. Now we just have to clean it up to get rid of all of this old grease. And then we can start assembly after. So the next thing we're going to do is we have to take the bushings out and get the ball joint. Now the ball joint we pressed on the press. Honestly, you can probably hammer it out, but it was a little bit easier on the shop press. If you don't have one, you are stuck with a hammer. It will come out eventually. What we're gonna do is we're gonna cut the rubber from inside the bushing, then we're gonna cut the bushing wall, and then we're just gonna knock the bushing out. There we go. Now, once that's out, you still have the shell. You see, you have to get rid of the shell. So usually what we do is we cut inside like this, and then it's very easy to knock out. Get yourself a nice metal blade. And like I said, what you want to do is you want to put it right there and cut on the inside of the shell. So you can see kind of what we're trying to do here. Is we're trying to cut the shell, get to the outer, to the actual control arm, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna try and knock this out. There it is. So, like I said, there's probably better ways. Ow! All right, it's a little on the hot side. So there's probably better ways to do this than the way we did. I'm sure there's a special tool in Mercedes, but this, we've done this quite a bit. It always works out. Try not to damage the bore inside here to scratch it out. But other than that, the bushing comes out very easily. And now you can actually press the new one into place on the press. It's a lot easier. For the bottom two, and yes, that's a two-piece, so there's two bushings, one at the top and one at the bottom. Right in the middle, you have this pin that just kind of keeps them together. So it's flared on one side, and when you put it in place, you flare on the other side. So without taking this kind of holds them together, but this is a very thin aluminum piece, so it's actually not too bad. So what we did is actually drill it out. Using one of these bits. There it is. So that's the one side of the aluminum pin. And now it's not really holding them together anymore. The next thing we did is we just knock it out. But I think we're gonna heat it up just a little bit. Now, like I was saying earlier, there's probably tools for this. However, for these two, you can see the lip of the bushing is actually all the way on the outside. There's no other means of how you can put this on the press because they're pushed against each other. So installing them is not going to be too bad. You can just press both of them into place. But to take them out, you can't really put it on a press because they're going against each other. So we're going to hammer the side of the bushing here to try and get it out. There's one out. The second one might be a little bit easier. We're gonna get it started the same way we did the first one. Just kind of split the lip away from the control arm. And then it should just come out with... And there's the second one. So there it is, guys. That's all the bushings out. The last thing we're gonna do is take the ball joint out on the press. Then we're gonna clean these up and give them a little bit of a spray to protect them from rust in the future. All right, so we're just gonna set this up on the press, support it on the bottom. And there it is. Now you can just knock it out and it will come out. All right, that's it. That's for all the parts. Now we're gonna go ahead and clean up the control arms and start assembly. Before we mount the whole hub assembly to the car is to obviously get the bearings pressed into the hub and then the hub mounted onto the knuckle. This is the kit that I picked up. It's quite good actually. It comes with everything you need. So you got your grease, cap, seal, and the front and back bearings. So pretty straightforward. I've already cleaned the hub as much as I can. So we're going to take the front and the back bearings, because we're going to need to press the shells into the hub. So we'll take this one out. And we're going to take the big one out as well. Now it just so happens that a couple of the bits, the big bits that I've got here, are actually pretty good fit for pressing these guys in, as you can see right there. So they actually work quite well. And you're gonna need a press for this. You couldn't do it by just hammering the pieces in, but it is a little bit easier on the press. So, all right, and now just have a look. Yeah, nice and clean. All right, flip it around, same exercise, little bit of grease. Don't go crazy here. Make sure it's nice and centered. This time around, we're going to use this big guy. Like I said earlier, it's a pretty good fit and actually fits inside the hub. This is a number 46 in case you need to get something like that. Put this a little bit further up. There we go. Same exercise. Get it centered. Like I said, you can probably get this done with a hammer if you were so inclined, but it is a lot easier on a shop press. The next thing to do is to actually get the bearing in the shell. So we're going to take this big guy and we're going to grease it up really good. That's it. Good enough. And we have a seal that sits on the back of that, which is in the box. There we go. Same procedure. The seal goes in like this on top of the bearing. So obviously you don't put the seal in before the bearing. I'm going to use the same bit to push that in. Don't overdo the seal because it's quite soft, so it might actually get squished. There it is, folks. That's the back side. Now, before we close the front, which is actually done until we put it on the hub, on the knuckle, sorry. What you want to do is you want to grease up the shaft as much as you can. because that's where the bearings are going to sit. So we're going to take the grease and we're going to apply it on the shaft as much as we can. It's nice and greasy where the bearings are going to go. There we go. And pretty straightforward. We just slide the hub right on top. Like so. So that's the back bearing is in now. And now we're going to put the small bearing on top. There we go. Same thing, don't be afraid to put more grease in. That's it. We've got the control arm cleaned up and rust painted. I didn't touch the bottom because honestly it's got a nice nice coating from when they were doing the rust proofing. So I decided not to clean that off just so I can apply more paint to it. So I'm just gonna do the top side here. We've got to do so this will be the front. This is where the sway bar goes. We've got to do the front bushings, the rear bushing, and the bow joint. The first one we're gonna do is the bow joint here, which is right there. Let's take a look at it. Goes in your bolt, that's great. And that's it. That was pretty easy. Let's have a look. Yeah, that seems all right. We didn't seem to damage anything. And it seems to be facing the right way. Good, one's done. These two, so you will notice there's a flat spot on both of these, which corresponds to these two nubs on the front as well. The manual says for the W201 that the flat spots on the front have to face up. So these nubs end up pointing up like this. Okay. All right, there we go. So you can use the vise just to put them into place. There we go. That's pretty good. Nubs are facing up, and actually if you see, it's got little marks here which you can line with the welds. Everything seems to be pretty good. The last thing you want to do for this is to get the pin inside. Now you will notice it is flared on one side and not on the other side. So actually once you push it in, you're gonna flare up the other side. Now, the first time around, put a little bit of grease on that as well. The first time around I had to knock it in. There it is. Now I used two of my reducers here just to do the flaring. Seems Mercedes has a special tool for it, but obviously we're not gonna do that. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this guy underneath just to kind of keep it in place while we hammer on it. And we're gonna use this guy. See, he's got a nice flare on it. And we're just gonna hammer this in place. There it is. All right, the last one has to go in from the back forward. So again, this is the front of the vehicle where the sway bar is. So this has to go back forward, and the flat spots have to be perpendicular to the direction of travel. So the vehicle's going this way, these things are perpendicular. Now, One thing that helped me out, actually, what I did is I just marked sort of this way, so when you put it inside, you can keep the direction because you can line up with the welds here. For the last bushing, I had to modify the press a little bit. To be honest, this press is not very good, so it's very hard to get this in. Honestly, if you have the tool, you got to use the tool. If you don't have the tool, just go and buy yourself a new arm. This is a pain in the butt. Okay, this is not a good way to do it. This is not very safe. It's getting through. You can see that it's getting pushed in. But honestly, I wasted way too much time doing this. So I would highly recommend getting the entire control arm. I'll share the link below. There was absolutely, yeah, okay, I saved, maybe a couple $100, but I've so far wasted way more time trying to get these bushings in and out than just simply swapping it out in the car and forgetting about it. So anyways, this is done. I'm going to finish this up and then we're going to put it up on the car. But, my piece of advice is don't bother. There we have it, folks. That's the control arm finished up with all new bushings front and back, new ball joint. We've got the knuckle and the hub cleaned up. We've got new bearings front and back and a new bearing seal at the back. New Bilstein shocks, new shock mounted at the top. Yeah, you will notice I had to remove the dust shields. That's so I can fit the 334mm bendable brakes on top, which will not clear with the original W201 shields. That's it for this episode, folks. Thanks a lot for joining me as always. If you like what you see, click the thumbs up. If you do want to see some more of this content, click subscribe. By all means, comment below. Let me know if you have a better way of doing any of this work. And I'll see you in the next episode.